go, Fritz.
The Bears are who we thought they were.
The Bears. The Bears.
I am the great Cornholio.
We'll see what happens.
Playoffs?
See, Sean McDonough, Jay Billis. Goats!
Can you play a song? Something cool.
Put my mic on.
I'm calling both games.
Oh, baby.
Are you serious? Goes down the field for Smith. Oh, he got it!
Seattle. We're getting ready for Cincinnati.
As mentioned before the break, we will be getting to the NFL overtime rules. And, we kind of got into it a little bit in the last segment. And we need to carve out a whole nother segment for this. Because as I mentioned before the break, who on earth watched the end of that Chiefs-Bills game and, didn't want more? As I said, everybody on with a brain was like, give me more of that. Like, let him play. Let him play till, Mahomes' arm falls off, right? And, for the game to just kind of end just like that, 1 minute, the teams were going back and forth up and down the field, and then it was, boom, it's over because the Chiefs scored a touchdown. And I think that the Bills-Chiefs game, AFC divisional round this past weekend, I think it proves that the NFL needs to change the overtime rules, at least in the playoffs, right? Maybe the regulation or the regular season, you could say, well, the rules would stay the same for the regular season, but okay, at the very least, the postseason overtime rules need to be altered in some fashion. Because when it is win or go home, I'm sorry, but there's no reason that one team should be able to get the ball in overtime because of what side of a coin comes up when it gets flipped, right? What you know what I mean? Like, huh? What? The only reason the Chiefs won that game is because the coin came up their way, And there was the argument from one. There was two sides to this. There was a side that, okay, obviously overtime needs to be changed, right? And then there was the other side that was like, stop crying, right? People were like, oh, if the Bills wanted to win that game, they should have made a stop on defense to earn the win. And I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that by any means, but sure, Buffalo, you could say, well, Buffalo should have stopped them from getting into field goal range with 13 seconds left. Buffalo should have stopped them in overtime. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. The Bills didn't. It was an offensive shootout all night long. Lionel Richie. Again, I don't necessarily disagree with saying, well, the Bills on defense need to make a stop. Okay, what about the Chiefs? The Chiefs never had to make a stop on defense, and they won the game, right? The Chiefs didn't, they weren't forced to stop them with 13 seconds left in regulation. The Chiefs weren't forced to stop them in overtime from marching down the field and scoring a touchdown, an inevitable touchdown, right? And we'll get to that in a little bit, but the Chiefs on defense were never forced to, to make a stop, right? People were going to argue that the Bills need to make a stop on defense. Okay, that's fine, but I think both teams need to get a shot on offense in overtime, especially in the playoffs, right? There's no reason that I flip a coin and it comes up tails that the Chiefs get the ball, score a touchdown, win the game, right? Because if it comes up heads, Bills get a touchdown and they score, they go down and score a touchdown, they win the game, right? It's just like, and I understand that, flipping a coin, right? Oh, it's a 50-50, right? Half tails, half, heads, whatever. Okay, so the coin comes up your way. I don't know. I just don't. For me, at least, both teams in overtime in the postseason need to have a chance to touch the ball, whether or not the first team scores a touchdown. That's just the way it should be, right? And so, yeah, Chiefs got into field goal range with 13 seconds left, obviously, right? But once they did that, didn't it seem didn't it seem kind of silly to expect the Bills to make a stop on defense in overtime? Like, the Chiefs just went, 50 yards in 13 seconds to set up a game-tying field goal and send it into overtime. At that point, it felt kind of silly to expect that the Bills were going to stop the Chiefs on defense in overtime, right? Because once the Chiefs did that and just, Just getting into field goal range was incredible. Then they tie it in overtime. Just obviously that was incredible, right? We all realize that. But once that happens for Kansas City, all the momentum swings to their side, right? Uncle Mo is heavily on the Chiefs' sideline. And again, it just seems kind of silly to expect that the Bills are going to stop the Chiefs in overtime from scoring a touchdown after that incredible sequence of plays to even get to overtime. And for Josh Allen to have the night of his life, right? To have the game of his career, and to sit on the sideline and just watch his team give up that touchdown, that's got to be just absolutely heart-wrenching, right? Because, I mean, what else can you do, right? You're sitting there on the sideline and you're thinking, well, I've done everything I can do and I'm still going to lose. I'm sure that feels great, right? So again, both teams need to touch the ball in overtime in the postseason. End of story. Now, whether we can argue and we can kind of get into what the specifics of that will look like. Like, well, okay, what happens if both teams score a touchdown? Personally, I think it should just be, well, we're going to go through a few scenarios here, and there's one that I really like. Excuse me. In 2019, the Chiefs proposed this change. The Chiefs proposed that both teams would get the ball in overtime regardless of whether or not the first team who gets the ball scores a touchdown, right? Both teams will still get the ball regardless. The overtime coin flip would be eliminated in their proposal. The pregame coin flip would decide which team will receive or kick in overtime. Now, from what I read, this proposition did not really tell us what would happen if both teams scored a touchdown, right? Like, what happens if, is it just sudden death at that point? Because if so, in that case, we kind of are back to square one, where it's okay, well, you won the coin toss, you scored first, then the other team scores, and now you have the ball again, where you just have to go down the field, kick a field goal to win the game. We're kind of right back to square one. So I like the start of that proposition, but I think you could kind of use that to kind of lay the foundation for what should be the overtime rule. In 2020, the Philadelphia Eagles proposed that whichever team has scored more touchdowns in regulation will have the same options as a team that wins the pregame coin toss. So, for example, let's say the Ravens and Eagles are playing, and the Ravens scored 5 touchdowns in the game, whereas the Eagles scored 3, right? The Ravens would be able to choose if they receive or kick the ball, and then the Eagles would receive which end zone they're going to defend. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of that one because, I don't know, I just feel like if the game's tied, right, more often than not, I'm not saying that you're going to score the same amount of touchdowns. Like, you can score 2 field goals and then get a touchdown and 2 points, while the other team scores 2 touchdowns and you're both at 14 points, right? But I feel like, I don't know, That's not a terrible rule by any means. That's not one where I look at. It's not one I'm going to scoff at, and that's not one I'm going to say, no way. But that is one where I'm kind of like, I feel like we could do better, right? I feel like we could do a whole lot better than that. Not a terrible proposition, but I think we could do better. In 2021, the Ravens and the Eagles both proposed a spot and choose kind of scenario. That was ultimately shut down by the league. The winner of the coin toss in this scenario can do one of 2 things. They can choose to start with the ball on offense or defense, or they can choose where the ball will be spotted to begin overtime. So, example number 1. A team could choose to receive the ball, but the other team will choose where the ball is spotted. So let's say Ravens and Eagles are playing, and they go into overtime, and the Ravens win the coin toss, and they say, we want the ball. The Eagles can turn around and say, okay, we're going to spot the ball on your own 1-yard line, so you have to go 99 yards to score. Example number 2. Ravens and Eagles go to overtime. Ravens win the coin toss. The team that wins the coin toss could choose to spot the ball wherever they please, and then the other team who doesn't win the coin toss will choose whether they will start on offense or defense. So kind of where this would come in is the team that wins the coin toss would say, we're going to put the ball on the 15-yard line, right, on the offense's own 15-yard line, right? And then the other team who didn't win the coin toss can say, okay, we like that challenge. We think we can go 85 yards down the field and score a touchdown and win the game. Or they say, I don't like my chances. I want to start on defense because I think we can stop you deep in your own side of the field. I think we can get the ball back, score a field goal, win the game. Kind of how that would work. That is an interesting way of thinking about overtime. I'm not so sure that that is a practical overtime solution. I don't know if that is one that, it was shut down for a reason, right? And all these propositions were just kind of like, hey, what if we did this? Kind of bringing something to the table. And obviously the NFL and these teams and owners and all that good stuff would work on it and improve it. It wouldn't just be like, here's what we have proposed, and like, all right, sounds good, we'll put it into action next week. That's not how things work. Some other ideas that came up after the Bills-Chiefs game, and this is the one that I really like. It's short, it's sweet, it's concise, it's simple, it's not very confusing, and it is this. Let them play the whole 15-minute overtime, 10-minute overtime, whatever it is, right? Let them play the entire thing, right? Give them an extra quarter. What's so bad about that? If they tie at the end of that one, give them another one, right? Like I said, everybody who was watching that game was like, I don't want this thing to end. It was like Christmas Day. You never want it to end. You never want to go to bed, right? And I don't know. I think that's fine, right? Let them play the full 15 minutes. What's wrong with that? I think that's great. Because then it's first team goes down the field, score a touchdown. That doesn't matter. You got 10 minutes left, right? 8 minutes, whatever it is. Because I know in regular season it is a 10-minute overtime period, but I believe I didn't pay too close attention, but I believe because it was only a short drive, so I didn't have a chance to look at the time in overtime. But I believe that it is a 15-minute overtime in the postseason. I like that. Again, it's concise, it's simple, it's easy to understand, right? Now we go into overtime, and it's like you need to learn a second language to understand the different scenarios. Play the full 15 minutes, and whoever is the lead, whoever wins at the end of that 15-minute period wins the game. I don't see anything wrong with that. Another idea that I saw was to have the teams play to 8 points, and this one I'm kind of unclear on because I was looking for like a full explanation on this, and I didn't really get one. And so basically, how this one would work, to my understanding, is the team who wins the coin toss, obviously is going to say, yeah, we want the ball, right? Obviously. So they can, if they go down the field and score a touchdown, then they can kick the extra point, I believe, or they can go for two, right, and seal the game right then and there, win the game with an 8-point possession. So again, this was one that I was kind of looking for, like, more explanation, because what happens if you go down the field and you don't get the 2-point conversion, right? What happens if you get 6 or 7 points? There was definitely some lacking. There was some lacking explanation on that one, so I'm not too sure what that one would look like. But that's one that I think is, I guess you could say, plausible, right? Like, that's not the worst thing in the world. But I don't know. I just like the plain and simple one, right? Let them play. Let them play the full 15 minutes, right? And whoever wins at the end of that one is the winner of the game. I don't see anything wrong with that at all. So that's what I would do. And just to further kind of explain this, under current overtime rules, there have been 11 overtime playoff games. Teams that won the overtime coin toss, 10-1. So if you think that winning the coin toss doesn't have that much of an impact, you'd be severely mistaken. So I think the NFL they have to do something about this, right? I think that after that game between the Bills and Chiefs, they have to alter the rules somehow to give both teams a shot to have the ball. Because I think that, like, I don't know, I think that just the flip of a metal coin deciding the game is kind of ridiculous, to be honest with you. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that agree as well. So if you have some really strong feelings on that, I'm sure you do, hit me up on Twitter at Mike's Madness MU to give me your thoughts on that. And again, this was a heated debate all over Twitter and Instagram and whatever people were using. Even people on ESPN and SportsCenter, whatever, right? This was a heated debate this week. There was some people that said, yeah, the overtime rules need to be changed, and there's people that said, no, the overtime rules are fine. Just we need to see better defense. And like I said, after the Chiefs went down the field in 13 seconds to get into field goal range, it seemed kind of silly to expect them to stop the Chiefs in overtime. Just what I'm thinking. Maybe I'm a little out of line on that, but that's just how I felt when people were like, well, they should have stopped them on defense. And I was like, you really think that was going to happen? You really thought that was possible? And that's the other thing. Like I said earlier, I don't know how you beat this Chiefs team in the postseason. I don't know if it's possible to stop them on defense when the game is on the line.